I had a sleepless night last night. Those of us who travel constantly often do, strange beds and all. But I would have to say that much of what kept me awake way too way into the early hours of the morning was thinking about Palestine. It was thinking about how one people feels that it has the right to oppress another people in order to be supposedly safe. I was so agitated, I got up, I rolled over and opened up my computer and started looking at what was on the news about this event. And I was extremely disturbed, but not in the least bit surprised, to see in the Jerusalem Post and other newspapers, news outlets, attacks on this forum, attacks on people who support the BDS movement, attacks on anything that does not support the Israeli narrative. The state of Israel has a right to a narrative. It may or may not be valid. In my country, I am from this country, the United States of America, fake news has become a huge watchword. Unfortunately, it is mostly out of Washington that we get the fake news. It is disturbing, however, that the state of Israel does not wish to allow Palestinians to have their narrative heard. It is partly the subjugation of the narrative that allows the occupation to continue. If people around the world really understood the situation in Palestine, it is very difficult to believe that they would sit back and do nothing. I've had the, I can't say pleasure, I have been to the West Bank, and anyone who goes there and who emerges from there and says it is not an occupation has fallen through the looking glass of Alice in Wonderland. It is an open air prison, especially Gaza. And the Palestinian people have a right to tell their story. And those of us who support human rights and freedom have the right to support people, no matter who they are, in their quest for self-determination without being attacked, because we happen to believe in human rights and self-determination. In my insomnia, I wrote down a few things, which I rarely do because it tends to throw me more than, concentrate my thinking. But I do want to I will be talking about what civil society can do, but I wanted to do a little overview of, I've been an activist, by the way, since, for 47 years. My first protest was against the US war in Vietnam. I worked for 11 years trying to stop US military intervention in Nicaragua and El Salvador. I have a long history of finding no comfort in being silent in the face of aggression by a state, whether it is my own, whether it is the state of Israel, or any other nation that feels like it can take other people's land and call it okay. Especially because they twist national security concerns to justify the stealing of land and the oppression of people and the racism and treating them like they are less than human. We see that in my own government at this moment with the decision by the Supreme Court to allow the partial use of the president's executive order to disallow Muslim people from 6 states to come to this country. Again, national security. Living in a state of fear anywhere is not security. It is living in a state of fear. It is a means of silencing opposition. If you dared to speak out, you were labeled. Fortunately, when I was 13, I decided I would not live my life as a popularity contest. If I did, I would still be living in Vermont, I'd be married, and I might have 20 children. I was thinking this morning about the occupation also being an occupation of the mind, right? When it is an occupation of the mind, it means that, those other people don't have a story that is worthy of being listened to. I will make your life hell on the ground, and I will make your life hell no matter where you try to go to find support for your freedom. It is not people in the world that are trying to isolate the state of Israel. Because people disagree with Israeli policy of oppression does not mean that we are anti-Semite. It means that we support self-determination, period. And using labels in order to make people feel uncomfortable standing up for the rights of the Palestinian people is not working very well. And I feel it is blowing back on the state of Israel. I wish it weren't the case, but it is. I informally decided this was called Give Diplomacy a Chance, because after when I started skimming articles, I saw one line at the end of the first paragraph of an article in which it called upon the Palestinian people to give diplomacy a chance. With that, I had to close my computer and try to go to sleep. How many decades do people have to give diplomacy a chance? It's an absurdity at this point to call it giving diplomacy a chance. If I were a Palestinian person, I would be wondering, who is my partner in this negotiation? How can, well, first of all, you occupy me, so it's a total, asymmetry of power, as we all know. But on top of that, you're stealing more of my land. How can a state say that we should give diplomacy a chance when it continues to steal the land and livelihood and water and resources of the people of Palestine? To think that that is a true negotiating partner, again, is like falling through Alice's looking glass into a world where up means down and down means up, and oppression doesn't mean oppression, and et cetera, et cetera. So, just like when we decided we would launch a campaign to stop landmines, we recognize that waiting for governments to take meaningful action is like waiting for Godot. Had we not launched the campaign to ban landmines, they would still be in use by every country that's been using them in the world. Within the space of 5 years, and this is a model for action. It is not, you can stick in something, it doesn't have to be landmines. It can be the nuclear ban treaty, it can be cluster munitions, it can be the ICC, it doesn't matter. Governments move when civil society pushes them to move, and I'm sorry that sometimes we make diplomats upset. Actually, no, I'm not. If we didn't make diplomats upset, what would happen? What would happen? So I was thinking about some things that we have done in other campaigns that might be useful. And I was thinking about some of the things that have started to be done already that can be more useful. I realize that people think the BDS movement is awful. and that it isolates Israel. And the people of Israel should not have to suffer. That's one point of view. That point of view also says that if you support the BDS movement, you are giving Netanyahu and the right wing fodder. They also said, not the BDS, but people also said that the 14 nations that voted for Resolution 2334 were giving Netanyahu and the right wing fodder, that they were 14 votes against negotiation. That means that anything that anyone does that does not accept the Israeli state narrative is giving fodder to Netanyahu and the right wing. That's insane. That implies we should all sit back and do nothing and hope that the benevolence of the occupying state will find itself and free the Palestinian people. That's not how power works. Power does not concede power without pressure. Period. We all know that. So why do we pretend that actions taken to put pressure on the state of Israel will not push the state of Israel to change its behavior? No state likes to be a pariah. Look at South Africa. You know, we're told that the BDS movement won't work, won't do anything. Well, it helped in South Africa. If the people of Israel, who many of the speakers yesterday recognized are sticking their head in the sand and willfully ignoring the reality of the occupation, if they don't feel discomfort in that, why will they do anything to change the situation? Very few people take action as long as they are comfortable, as long as their family is okay. It is not that anyone wishes ill on Israeli people. What people wish is that you get off your butt and do something. And that will not happen until you are out of your comfort zone. The same with FIFA. I noted that there was interaction between the Israeli state and FIFA, the football people. Not American football, the other kind of football. I don't like any of it, so it doesn't matter. But the FIFA people and the state of Israel being able to push FIFA to put off a decision because they convinced FIFA leadership that it had, confused itself and accepted the Palestinian narrative. Again, another example of if you do not accept the state of Israel's narrative, you're somehow confused and you're wrong. I was happy, however, to note that 100 organizations had joined in that movement. Whoever is coordinating it should work double time to enlarge the number of organizations, celebrities, individuals putting pressure on FIFA. I was talking with Galia yesterday about that resolution, 2334. By my calculation, I read it a little bit this morning, there should have been 2 reports by now on the implementation of 2334. I see there have been none. Maybe there's been 1. But I suggested to Galia that just like we did in the landmine campaign, civil society should begin its own reporting. When the landmine treaty became law, we were already starting to report annually on the states, the ones that did not join the treaty and why, what they were doing to maybe move toward the treaty, and the states that had joined the treaty and how they were fulfilling their obligations. Every year that we did that, we still do it, by the way, every year that that report has come out, governments immediately go to the page that is about them. They want to see how they are portrayed. We created lists of the good, the bad, and the ugly, which is self-explanatory. Why can that not be done by civil society with regard to 2334? If governments will not do it themselves, we can help them. Generally, they don't like our interpretation, but so what? So what? If they aren't going to do it, somebody has to. That's part of civil society. Yesterday, I happened to go to a side event on the nuclear negotiations. I have a fondness for disarmament. And it was about, here's an example document that people could do. Don't bank on the bomb. And it is an effort of the coalition, but primarily by Pax Christi, to document both the companies around the world that do invest in nuclear weapons in one way or another, and to also document those who have stopped doing so. And I was truly stunned yesterday to hear that their efforts, and they are in constant discussion with banks, with investment firms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that 54 investment entities have laws now, or let's call them laws that disallow investment in nuclear weapons. By their calculations, some 1.7 trillion, which my mind cannot wrap around, $1.7 trillion have been diverted from investment in nukes. But it takes concerted effort. It takes documentation. It takes taking the document to the investment companies who hate being on the wall of shame. Nobody wants to be a pariah. But if you put up the wall of shame, you will find that governments come running to you, trying to tell you how they've changed their behavior, and can they at least move from the wall of shame to the wall of those trying to move to the wall of good. No, they seem like small things, but all of those things together add up. I was pleased to see that Amnesty International has now launched a campaign calling for a ban on settlement goods, the importation of settlement goods, as well as countries not allowing their corporations to carry out activities in the settlements. That's long overdue. But I would hope that I don't communicate with Amnesty on this, but I would hope that that effort is bigger than just a call, right? They're calling for this. I hope they do something like this. List the companies, list the governments, list the products so that people don't have to, you go online, you Google, you find some products that come from settlements, but if you have a place you can go and you see the entire list, then people can target those companies. It's easier. If you want people to become involved, you want to make it easy for them to become involved. I also would hope that Amnesty and other organizations, in the context of this, would put pressure on those governments in the West who have not recognized the state of Palestine, to my great confusion. Yesterday, I think it was Mr. Robert Sari, was talking about that perhaps it was maybe time for the EU to consider thinking about maybe recognizing the state of Israel. Not the state of Israel, sorry, the state of Palestine. I agitated the moderator, not on purpose, but because I was trying to direct a question to him about what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? If you want to pressure the state of Israel, you recognize the state of Palestine. You begin to make it a reality, as speakers said yesterday, so that it can't be done away with. I would hope Amnesty, Human Rights Watch, other organizations, POCs, they're great, start putting pressure on the European governments to recognize the state of Palestine. It's all of those kind of activities together that bring about change. And they do bring about change. I mean, just look at the fact that there are negotiations to ban nuclear weapons going on here. People say it's relevant because the nuclear powers aren't involved. I don't agree. You stigmatize the weapon and you begin to have a pressure point on the states that do keep them. Stigmatization, making people pariah, helps to bring about change. I also, from these larger issues, I also was sitting in the back with a bunch of religious women from Canada, different parts of Canada, who had been in the West Bank. And coming back from that, they started, let me see if I can remember how they said it. They started groups in their own towns across Canada of solidarity with the Palestinian people and started little, discussion sessions, etc. All of those activities matter. And they matter even more when there is communication among the organizations carrying them out. We succeeded in banning landmines, cluster bombs were banned because we communicated. When I started the campaign to ban landmines, we were 2 NGOs, one in the US, one in Europe. I could call it international. And it was a staff of 1, me. That's it. Within 5 years, we were 1,300 non-governmental organizations in 80 to 90 countries in a coordinated effort to ban landmines, and we did. Isolated work is useful. Coordinated work is better. I'm going to stop because we're so far behind. I'm not going to stop, but I'm going to start winding down. And I want to I was at a conference. It's not the only thing I do. I was at a conference at the end of May. And there was a speaker who I took a lot of notes from. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read a few of them, a few of the statements. Fear, we can feel it in the air. Fear, not only do we feel it in the air, we see the result of that fear, which is the surrender of political courage. Excuse me. Privacy is not about something to hide, it's about something to protect. The legality of a thing is very different from its morality. Universal rights today, and I firmly believe this, universal rights today are threatened not by terrorists, they are threatened by fear. Universal rights are threatened by the fear perpetrated by governments under the guise of national security, who then allow themselves to take away our rights. And it is happening inside Israel as well. People cannot protest things they do not know about. Thus, the control by the state of Israel of the narrative makes it difficult in some circumstances for people to take action. If you don't know what's going on, it's hard to act. And if you don't want to know what's going on, it's really easy to hide behind that. Again, I think that's a critical one. People cannot protest what they do not know about. Abridging freedom of the press makes us dependents, not partners in democracy. A quiet society is not a democratic society. I believe that happened to my country. which is why we are in the political situation we are in today. We were reduced from being citizens, from being people, from being individuals. We're consumers. That's all we are. Any newspaper article talking about the people of the United States, we're consumers. And if you're reduced to nothing, you begin to believe that you have no role in creating the democracy you say you want to live in. Being constantly terrorized by the world takes away our freedom. Those words were from, I still have a couple more minutes. I'm trying to actually be good. Those words were from a live feed of Edward Snowden. Many people in my country think he was a traitor. I think he's a hero along the lines of the man who revealed the Pentagon Papers and the lies that led the United States of America into the Vietnam War. I will end early, I might note. I found this article, I liked it, Haaretz, I'm probably mispronouncing it, and it is entitled "The 52 Words That Foretold the Future of Israel's Occupation in 1967." And it talks about two ads that appeared in Israel on September 22nd, 1967, 3 months after the occupation of the land of Palestine. One was by very elite, well-known individuals who were singing the praises of the deliverance of the Holy Land to the chosen people. People loved it. Israeli euphoria, which we heard about yesterday, which began to change the thinking of Israelis about the right of occupying another human being. The other ad, which brought, of course, vilification, but was very farsighted, said this, and none of the people were well known, so it was particularly easy to vilify them, to sideline them, and not listen to what they had to say. I stand with what they say, by the way. Our right to defend ourselves against annihilation does not grant us the right to oppress others. Conquest brings in its wake foreign rule. Foreign rule brings in its wake resistance. Resistance brings in its wake oppression. Oppression brings in its wake terrorism and counterterrorism. The victims of terrorism are usually innocent people. Holding on to the territories will turn us into a nation of murderers and murder victims. Let us leave the occupied territory now.